All right, welcome to the Fuse Show. Today I have Vishal Sunak. He is the CEO of LinkSquares, a full contract management platform. He is responsible for the developing strategies to assist both corporate legal and finance teams with the review of their contracts. He works to prevent his customers from having to read each contract one by one. He founded LinkSquares to build great products to improve how businesses operate. Vishal, welcome to the show. It's great to have you. Just tell us about LinkSquares, how you got started.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Real pleasure. So I was working at a tech company and a small tech company, and we got approached to be purchased by a much larger tech company. And they came into the business and they asked us what was in all the contracts we had executed for customers. We didn't have any idea. We didn't track anything. Very specific things like, can we move data off your infrastructure provider and onto our infrastructure? And which ones have auto renewal and termination for convenience? And we didn't really know those answers. So my co-founder and I worked at this tech company in Boston together. I was in like an operations role. He was in like a customer success role. So we both like had the pain of this project of the acquiring company. It was a real light bulb moment. I mean, I went out and looked at kind of contract management as a landscape, and it was really heavy in what I call pre-signature technology, which is technology that enables you to like draft and version and workflow and approve contracts before they get signed. But our pain was really post-signature with like contracts we had already executed. And that's where the inspiration for the company came from. We started from there, started talking to eventually general counsels were the ones that had this responsibility inside the company, and we took it from there and been growing and going ever since.
Okay. So this company comes and says, hey, we'd like to acquire you. We need all this stuff. And you're like, okay, great. Was this an aha moment, or was this a oh crap moment? Or was it kind of
It was like a
both into one?
it was a combination of like, oh my God, no one has ever asked us that question ever. Where are all the contracts? Which is how the kind of the internal project that we were doing got started with like, I wonder where they all are. Like, are they in Google Drive or attached to Salesforce opportunities or printed out in a filing cabinet? And we obviously go to the general ledger, right, and see kind of
Mhm.
all the accounts that we had. And that was like 5,000, maybe 6,000. And so it was like, okay, if I can break down this problem into steps, like let's say we got all the contracts, what are we going to do with them then? A lot of them, or the majority of them, were scanned PDFs, so they're like unreadable, right? You can't search a scanned PDF. And so it was one of those moments where I think it may have taken us like 2 years to get that answer, which we obviously didn't have 2 years worth of time to devote to this project. And yeah, we kind of started from there trying to understand that like we're not alone. Like we were just like a Series B startup with a couple hundred, like 100 employees, a lot of customers, a meaningful amount of recurring revenue. We can't be alone. Like we can't be the only company that's ever felt the pain of not knowing what's inside their contracts. And that's kind of how everything got started.
Oh, yeah. So how long did it take you to go through all that? And was that the genesis of LinkSquares? Did LinkSquares come
Yep.
out of that? Is that where like you started working on this problem and you're like, you know what, we can make this a business,
Hmm.
and it just developed from there.
Yeah, it's not as like fantasy world as maybe other stories are for founders, but that moment occurred in the fall of 2014, where the acquiring company was asking us this question. And then my co-founder and I just started working on it Wednesday nights and Sundays. That was the time we had devoted to it. We were both working full time. And then eventually, through a lot of conversations, we decided that we weren't going to rush into building software until we knew what the problem was. We had talked to like 100 general counsels, and we had enough backing in our conviction that we should now apply software, right? And I think that's one of the most valuable lessons that we took from the journey. it was a really long, painful year. Even like, 2016 was a long year, just trying to kind of put the pieces together and figure out like, what is this problem and what is the software that can solve it? Ultimately, by the end of 2016, we had 5 customers. And then by the end of 2017, we had like 27 customers. And then by the end of 2019, we had like 180 customers, 175 customers. And things really started to pick up as we began to like operationalize our sales and build more software. And so, I mean, that was kind of our journey, just being like really disciplined up front in the discovery phase, making sure that we solve the right problem, which I think is something that people on the startup journey, they run into this issue, right? For whatever reason, you run out of time, you run out of money, you got to make a bet, you feel pressured, you get impatient. That was one of like the biggest learnings, is like, make sure you know what problem you're solving and go and solve that problem with software if that's the path. Okay.
What I gathered there, I heard most of that, but what I gathered there was fixing the right issue, and I think you fix the right issue when you start finding customers, but not only finding customers, but finding the right customers, and I think by your customer list, and I don't know when you acquired these customers, but you find good customers and the right customers, right? So you found customers like Fitbit and Wayfair and DraftKings and Igloo, Twilio. Like, you found big customers with lots of customers themselves, with lots and lots and lots of different contracts. And they're like, man, I have to think that these guys were like, I don't want to go through all my contracts and figure out all this kind of stuff either. Like, these guys have got a solution that we need. When did you start bringing these big companies on? Was it pretty early on when they like, man, these guys have a solution that we need? And was that just a huge kickstart for you? And like, man, we can pat ourselves on the back. We've got something that not only helps us, but helps these guys as well.
Yeah, we picked up many of these logos like 2019, 2020, but like DraftKings, we picked up in the first 10 customers. And it's so interesting, as you acquire customers, like the first 25, the first 50, they have so much meaningful impact to like the strategic direction of the company, like where you're going to head. Like, you're at a decision point of like building a specific feature. Do you go left or you go right? One of the things that we really prided ourselves on is like, I'm not a lawyer. Neither is my co-founder, Chris. Like, we're not lawyers. We're just guys that love building software companies. We love building software. I personally love building software. I'm an engineer. I'm a computer engineer by training. Software is like everything that has been my existence since I was a kid, right? And so being like customer driven is like a big value inside the company. It's like, I don't build this stuff for myself. It's not for me. It's for someone else who has a real pain. So, wow, we should just listen to people and gather enough information as we begin to derive, what is the software and what does it have to do, whether that's when you get started or now when we have, over 100 employees and we have like almost 500 customers. Like, it's still the same fundamentals, blocking and tackling is a football term, right? Like, you got to block and tackle, right? That's what you have to do. And it's just so important on the journey to find the right customers who believe in what you're doing, even though there may be some rough edges, and be unafraid of getting products out to market and ask people to pay for it. And then you really know you're onto something. People are giving you money, whether it's exactly what you think it could be in the future. You'll solve a lot of those problems later, right? You'll solve a lot of the optimization on pricing and packaging like way later on the journey. But like, Jason Lemkin, the founder of SaaStr, right, wrote this article that I've read a million times now. Like, you got to get 10 unaffiliated customers that, like, it wasn't like your brother's friends, uncles, frat brother, right? It's like, you can't have any connection to them. They heard about it from you, or they came inbound. You cold emailed them or cold dialed them, and then they became a customer. And that's when you know, if you can get 10, you can get 100, you can get 500, you can get 1,000, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I hadn't heard that before. I'll have to read that. But here's how I kind of want to go back just a just a minute on that. You say you got DraftKings in your first 10 customers. They're not a small fry. And you're saying that you need to listen to your customers and listen to their pain points, where you're still growing at that point, and you still have to listen to your pain points and listen to yourself. How do you not like intertwine those and try and listen to yourself more than your customers and get those messages mixed up while still trying to grow yourself? Like that's gotta be a rough ride.
Yeah, it's like juggling three chainsaws while riding a unicycle,
Yeah.
right? It's complicated, and it's an art and it's a science, right? And so the art part of it is, let's just absorb what the problems are and see if we can validate that, like, company X has a problem, company Y has the same problem. How do you think about this problem in context of like how your business operates? And there's going to be varying differences, right? Like Wayfair and DraftKings, they're like B2C type of offerings, while like Twilio is more like a B2B or like B2 developer, right? And so what we began to figure out was there's a lot of commonality around the pain. Like, my repository today is not, powerful enough to support what I need. The scanned PDFs are an issue. I don't have searching capability, let alone like algorithms that are reading the contract and extracting almost 100 pieces of metadata about what you've agreed to automatically. Like, that was an AI journey that we took through customer validation, that we should create technology that can read a contract, right? And so um, one thing that's really kind of inside the secret sauce is we focus on problems, but we always solve with software the LinkSquares way, right? It's like there's could be 10 different paths on how to build a feature to solve a problem, but we're always going to build it like in the LinkSquares way, right? That makes sense with how we think about the solution space, right? Which is what ultimately creates a great brand and creates a great brand experience. Everything that we've thought of and how we're going to solve problems has ultimately been derived um, through software, but powered by the customers and what their pain is, right? And that's been some of the special sauce that's made the journey so incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Good stuff. Um, I don't know. I think you're doing a tremendous job, and you start in 2016, and this comes organically, through your pain point. You're solving other people's pain points. You're growing. You're growing. You're growing. The end of 2019, beginning of 2020. Right now it says you have 120-ish employees or so, right? And bam, the world gets hit with what the world gets hit with, this pandemic, right? I'm guessing that you guys are sitting, up in Massachusetts here in an office building with your employees, and the world gets hit with COVID, right? What happens then? Like, how does that affect what you guys are doing? How do you navigate through what the whole world has to navigate through then? And how does that affect your business? Does COVID? Because I know with us, like, as awful as this whole thing has been, it's actually helped our business, and it sucks to say, with the hurt and pain that it's caused for so many people, it's actually been good for some people. And has that been the case for you with all this remote, with everybody going remote? Like, how has this affected you personally, business-wise? And then how has it affected your business? Has it helped you grow? What have you guys had to do with your office space? How did you navigate this whole pandemic situation?
Yeah, so at the end of Q4 2019, I was raising our Series A, and on December 17th, we had the term sheet from Jump Capital, who ended up ultimately leading our Series A. So we kind of had a choice of going out in Q4 or going out in Q1. And as luck would have it, I decided to just go out in Q4 because the business was performing really well. And we had already added more than 100 new logos in 2019. So I thought I could have enough conviction to convince venture capitalists to keep the journey going. So we got really lucky there. The cash hit the bank early February. And then by March, in the middle of March, the news was out on kind of what this thing was that we were all going to be dealing with for a long time and still dealing with. So, by kind of March 15th, we had decided to move a historical, very rich and energizing in-office experience to full remote and shut the office down indefinitely until we knew more. And so there was a lot of things we had to do and change, right? Like how we used to do all hands, like gathered around a giant television in the middle of our office, and move that completely to Zoom. And then how do we think about employee engagement so people aren't like A, burning out, and B, drifting off, like no one cares about me. Do they know that I still work here? And so, I asked my direct reports and management team, like, we're going to have to start doing more one-on-ones to make sure people are okay. Like, not only in their work lives, but also in their personal lives. Like, what are you dealing with? Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I live with my grandmother, and she's an at-risk population. And like, what can we do to support every individual employee? We just basically went one to end through the entire employee roster. And then there was also the uncertainty of like what our performance was going to be. And it was a really challenging time. Like, I'd say March, April, May, it was really uncertain, even though we were in the best position that you could be, because we had just filled up the bank account with over $14 million. What I didn't want to do was do anything crazy that could jeopardize, the company's future. And so ultimately we like adjusted our board plan and what the target could be, factoring in the uncertainty. We were still able to basically grow 100% year over year that year in 2020, which is really incredible. That's a lot of people working really hard, staying focused, continuing the mission. I mean, I used to get on the call with everyone once a week. We had a weekly all hands, and just driving the message home that, like, unfortunately, this is not what we all wanted. And like, there's no way that any of us wanted this, but we got to do it for the people we made our promise to. Like, we are changing the legal profession. We are doing what we said we would do, which is provide great software. We got to keep it going. And like, what mechanisms are broken, speak up about it. If you see something, say something, and let's go out and fix it. And, hats off to my squad, my Link squad, as we call it, rose up to the challenge, wouldn't quit. There's no quit in this team. It's a big part of our culture, to be all in, to never quit. And they're the ones that made the magic happen. I mean, we made it through, 3 quarters that year, closing a quarter at home, which means like, negotiating contracts and making order forms and calling people and texting them and slacking them. I mean, nowhere near the level of kind of efficiency that we operate with when we're all in the same office, and sales reps can come in and out of the leadership team's offices and get help on deals. And it was just like a real testament of like, the human strength and perseverance to make it happen. So we ended up doing really well. Cloud software, obviously the adoption of cloud software as people transitioned to working from home became pretty evident that if you're storing your contracts on like a shared network drive that you have to connect to like via VPN, it's just not going to fly, right? And so we caught some of that tailwind with like just cloud adoption being a business system that people needed to access now through their internet at home in a browser. And the SaaS and the cloud offering definitely helped there. And so yeah, we made it through. We closed the office down. And then at the start of Q4, as we began to understand like, what the lay of the land was, there was also like, personnel issues inside the company, especially with the younger population that are on the phone all the time, whether in customer success or sales. It's like, I can't stay at home with my 3 roommates anymore. Like, I can't do this job anymore. It's getting too difficult. Like, I never thought I would be home as much as I am now. And it's like another issue that management team overall got together and like, how can we support these employees? Well, by that time, the city of Boston had already kind of published the guidance that like offices can reopen at this capacity, with these restrictions. And we said, okay, I think we can do this safely with masks and all the policies that the city of Boston guided all companies on, and just kind of create an opportunity to help every employee, whether you're 50 years old and you live in 4,000 square feet in the suburbs with 6 bedrooms, or you're in a really bad roommate situation with 2 other roommates in 1,200 square feet. Like, how can we help, right? And so we're able to get through the end of that quarter pretty successfully, and then we've basically had a hybrid environment pretty much ever since. And now people are pretty comfortable coming into the office, and we get 3 or 4 or two or three surge days a week where we clear 70 people in the office, 80 people in the office, which is really nice. And
Yeah.
watching people connect with each other if they want, right? It's
Right.
also opened up my eyes to, like, do we care where you work? I mean, do I really care? Are we centering too close on the commutable Boston area to downtown Boston? Should we open up the aperture, which is exactly what we did, and we found some amazing talent outside of the commutable distance of Boston that is, in my viewpoint, irreplaceable. These people are irreplaceable to the journey that we have to go now. I also raised our Series B financing on Zoom, which we just raised $40 million and announced it last month, and I did the whole financing over Zoom. I was doing pitches sitting right here, sitting in my office at home doing pitches, and doing diligence from home. So yeah, it's been an awesome, weird, wild, confusing time, but you make it through. That's what you have to do.
Yeah. This this pandemic has forever changed the way that the world does business. That's for sure. Like, did you ever think, 15 months ago that you would raise your series
Never,
financing on Zoom, right?
never.
Um, I want to go back to how you said you and your management team started dealing with your employees differently. Like, we needed to be checking on these guys, and we just need to be checking to see how they're doing. Did you start to look at your employees differently um, when they were at home, and how did you start looking at them differently? Like, when they were in your office,
Sure.
you got to see them every day, but when they were out of office, because we're fully remote, and we have our employees are all over the world, right? Um, so, like, for example, when I was working in the oil field, I would check my weather every day just to see what our weather's going to be for that night, right?
Sure.
But now I find myself checking the world weather because we have people in the Philippines that are dealing with 7.1 magnitude earthquakes or volcanoes.
Right.
We have people working in the Caribbean that are dealing with hurricanes and tropical storms all the time. So, I mean, it kind of expands what we have to think about and how we have to deal with our employees, right? So how has this changed the way that you think about employees and, I guess, mental health, and just has that, now that they're back in office, has that changed the way that you think about your employees, even though you get to see them more in office? Has that changed the way that you think about mental health with them? Has that changed the way that you see them as people?
Yeah. Totally. I mean, we're much more acutely tuned to the signs of burnout now, probably more than ever before, as people may have congregated in the office, then gone home, as we transition to, like, the flexibility of working from home or doing it remote or doing it hybrid with a day or two in the office. Uh, the thing that we started looking at under a much tighter microscope is, are you burned out? Like, when was the last time you took a break? Like, why don't you
Right.
take Friday off? Why don't you take next week off? Like, um, I think there was, like, this moment of, like, fight or flight. Like, I'm gonna go fight now. I'm gonna work from home and I'm gonna do my job and I'm gonna do it really well. But, like, that also means I started at 7 in the morning and it's 10 o'clock at night and I can't stop. like there's so much work to do. Obviously, all the time the company is growing, there, especially on the engineering side. There's issues and there's fixes, there's bug fixes, there's patches, there's new releases, there's features, there's everything that we're doing, right? Like starting to identify like patterns that like, okay, hey, listen, like we really appreciate all the work you're doing, but you got to cut off at like 5 o'clock. Like you got to start cutting off at 5 o'clock. Like the work will get done, and we're sure of it, right? Um, and now it kind of translates into all the kind of frontline managers. Now, if you have people that work under you, it's like you almost got trained on how to look for things that we had never really seen before, which is like massive burnout because you're just working too much because you can't. You have the accessibility
Right.
of starting your day at 6 in the morning with no commute and working however long you want, right? And now we think about that a lot more, right? As we're growing the company and hiring people remote, like, even though we have unlimited vacation, like, expectation is like you got to take 3 weeks, like you got to take 3 weeks minimum, and try to do it like longer breaks so you really disconnect. And also like measuring and monitoring, like it's been 6 months since you took a day off, like I think it's time. I mean, I think, and then
Man, I love it.
coupled
Yeah.
with coupled with also like we did a bunch of like LinkSquares like wellness days where we just gave the company time off. Like we did a bunch of like we did a couple Fridays, we did a couple Mondays, try to make a long weekend out of it as people started to get vaccinated, and then they could make the decision if they were going to go see family and start to upgrade their social calendar, and figure out things to do safely. It's like, why don't we try to make as many 3-day weekends as we can? That's worth doing, and it absolutely was worth doing. And good feedback in the company, and we'll still do those things, right? Like having wellness days, take a day off, upgrading how many just days we're just forcing employees to commit to go have fun, go do something today. Like for me, like I'll play guitar for half a day. Like it's great. Disconnect a little bit.
I absolutely love it. And you're doing the same thing, right? Like you're practicing what you
Totally,
preach. You're not working from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Like that's
totally.
good. Good for you, man. Good for you. I love hearing that. I really think that that's happening more and more and more, and we're big believers in that here as well. Like it's
Yeah.
important. It's just so
I gotta say,
important to.
I,
I'm not good
I
at
mean,
it. I'm learning how to do that myself
I,
because this is my first job working on a computer, and that's been a big pain point for me. And I'm just now starting to learn how to do that. But we're big on that with our employees. And Jim, my boss, he's like, dude, yeah, you've got to learn how to do this. And I'm learning how to do it. I love hearing that you guys are doing that. It's awesome.
yeah. I mean, as I often say, I play a small but vital role, but a small role inside the company. It's not about me. It's mostly the people who work for me and the people who work for them, right? Like I can't
Hmm.
tell people how to sell. I'm not that person. I don't code things, right? Like ultimately it's all about the employees. They're the ones that make the company happen, right? They're the ones that make it actually work, right? And it's all about them. It's all about them first, our customers second, right? And to the extent that the workforce can work more efficiently working from home and find time to take breaks, like I'm all for it, because the company is about them. It's not about me. I'm just one person. I'm only good at so many things. I can only work so many hours, right? And the company is too big now, right? Like it's just too big to think about any one particular person trying to do the work of three people. Like it's unsustainable for our next journeys ahead. So yeah, it's all about the employees, and continue to reinvent the script. It's like all these things are unwritten. Like, what's the playbook? There is no playbook. You got to make bets and take chances and give people time off, even though they could be working. But there's a net positive gain there that they'll just be happier. They'll be happier overall.
Yeah, for sure. When you're writing a paper, you can fill the page with words, and it can say lots and lots and lots of stuff, but at some point it just gets jarbled, right? Or you can put breaks in the paper and have some white space, and it looks much neater and it's much more legible. It's the same type of thing. Like you can work and work and work and work and work, but it just gets jarbled at some point. But if you can take some breaks, then you're going to be much more efficient at working, and you're going to get much more done when you're much more fresh. And it just makes a lot of sense. So yeah, no, I love it, man. So what motivates you? You know, what makes you get up in the morning? You know, besides making LinkSquares work, what makes you tick?
Yeah, I have almost a 3-year-old now, little girl, and she gets me out of bed most mornings, anyways. But yeah, just being a great example for her of like going out and doing something really hard and setting your mind on something. And we have so many kids, like littler kids inside the company on the management team and other ways, like just being good role models, right, for the next generation of kids that grew up completely differently than we did, right? Like I didn't have the internet until I was like 10 years old or 11 years old. I had AOL dial up, right? And that was not even the real internet. It was whatever AOL gave you. Um, Being able to, show that, hard work still remains the same. It's the same hard
Yeah.
work that happened with, our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation. And it's different. It's actually harder now because, the internet exists and the connectivity exists, and you got to go out and make it in the world on your own. For the most part, that's the way to do it. That's what we've all done. Being able to set that example for my daughter is great, and hopefully I can tell her all the great stories of the journey when she's old enough to understand them. So that's what really motivates me, and also like I think we can do this. I wouldn't waste my time if I didn't think LinkSquares could, become a public company or reach like 9 digits of recurring revenue, which I absolutely believe that we can. And we're helping people out. When LinkSquares started being written about in like job descriptions, like familiarity with LinkSquares, like those were some of the most amazing moments for like me and the early founding team. Like we're becoming like a tool that people desire to have for their future employees and a skill set that they should have. Those have just been incredible moments that we are making our impact in the world. We are putting that dent in the universe, right? People are relying on what we're doing, and it's helping improve their quality of work and their efficiency and their overall quality of life. Those are all the things that get me out of bed, right? And because it's hard and I like doing hard things. If they were easy things, people have already done them, right? Let's go do hard things together.
Right. So that's what makes you number 253 on Inc.'s 5,000 fastest growing companies, and that's what makes you, that's what puts you as a finalist on Ernest and Young's Entrepreneur of the Year. Your passion and your drive, it's contagious, man. I'm just sitting here smiling and shaking my head. I love it.
Well, the Inc. 5000 is really a testament to hundreds of people that are rowing in the boat alongside me as hard as they can, and um, that was a awesome moment for us to celebrate all kind of the achievements that we've been able to do in the last 3 years, and really validate like where we're headed as a growth leader in contract management now in the industry. And so all about the team. That's how it
Yeah.
happens. It doesn't happen with one person. I may be
No,
the
it sure doesn't.
helmsman, but it's all about the team, and this is really about them. Even the award that I won, from UI is it's I can't do it without a great squad that wants to win alongside me, right? And believes what I tell them that we can. So
Yeah, you're right. But the passion comes from you and your partner, and you guys are at the helm, and you guys hold the torch, and your team does a fantastic job. And you guys couldn't do it without your team for sure. Like your team does a really, really great job. But you guys have the passion. You guys started this, this race, and I don't know. I applaud you. You guys are doing a really
thank you.
a really fantastic job. So here's a question for you, and it's one I kind of like to ask here. So if right now you had to start from zero, if everything was taken away from you and you had to start from zero, no money, no connections, what would you do?
No money, no connections is how we started. We didn't know any general counsels. Uh, yeah, I wouldn't really change anything about the early journey. Um, you got to build connections. The only way of doing that is being able to put yourself out there and be open to cold emailing 10,000 people, which 8,000 of them may tell you politely or unpolitely to go away. And then taking the 2,000 that say, yeah, I'll have a conversation with you and learn something, right? Your job in the early days is to learn if you're on the right track and have 50 people tell you that you are on the right path. Like, that's how you gain conviction in like taking a step to like build a product, right? Um, and the other thing is that learning how to raise money from VCs is like you can read the Medium articles all you want, or you can Google it all you want, but you only really learn that doing it, right? And there's so many things that I learned raising 4 rounds of capital that I wish there was an easier way to transfer that knowledge to the next group of first timers, right? Which is like, what is diligence going to be like? And what are things should you have off the shelf? And what kind of questions are you going to get asked? And now on the 4th round of fundraising, we were well prepared to be able to do it really fast, and we did do it really fast. But we also spent 3, 4, 5 months preparing to that moment where I was going to go out and talk to VCs about the next leg of the journey for LinkSquares. And if you think you have to be like a thick-skinned with people telling you no, I probably thought I had a really thick skin based on my personality, but I'd probably tell myself if I had to start again, like basically 98 out of 100 people when you get started are going to say that it's not going to be you and this journey and this product and this market and this buyer and this price point is not going to happen, and you just have to be okay with that. It used to bother me a lot more. It used to bother me a lot more when I was starting the journey, because I was like, no, you know what? No, I don't think so. But now it's kind of like, okay, yeah, hey, your opinion, my opinion, it could differ. You could be right, I could be right. Um, having that resilience, having more resilience, maybe 10 times more resilience than you think you need, especially when you're getting started, especially if you're a first timer. So
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned this, or kind of just pushed upon it a little bit, but you know, helping other entrepreneurs, helping other founders, helping other first timers. I think that's a huge thing. That's part of what this show is about. You know, founders guiding founders. I think that's a massive part of it. Is like you said, connections. You need the connections. Talking to other entrepreneurs, and just getting those. I think that's just a massive part of it. Is and that's what I would say is getting to know, or just getting to ask. And if somebody doesn't want to talk to you, then that's fine. You know, just go ahead and let them be, and then go to the next person, ask them questions, and say, hey, you know, what would you think? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? You know, and just get as many questions answered as possible.
totally.
I don't know. So from now, or from what you know now, you know, yourself 10, 15 years ago, what would you tell yourself? You know, your younger self. Same thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I just had some of my most earliest employees even kind of join 2017, like, you know, reflect back on this great kind of 4 years that we've had together. And we all came to the same conclusion that like 2017 Vishal is would be pretty proud of 2021 Vishal. And and looking around now at kind of the company that we built together, brick by brick, something to be really proud of, right? So, I would, if I was in a time machine now and I could go back in the DeLorean and tell 2016 Vishal, like, you're gonna do this, but you can't give up. You just can't give up, no matter how hard it is. If you got to 10 customers, hey, let me tell you, you made it to over 400, almost 500 customers, and you started doing like million ARR new business months, like doing a million of ARR in 1 month. Like, you can do it. It's going to happen. But the thing that's going to stop you is you're going to give up, or you're going to get tired. You can't get tired and you can't give up, because it's going to work. It's going to work because the foundation of it is like rooted in strong fundamentals that, like, you had product market fit. You knew it. You knew it in 2016. You knew it in 2017. You had product market fit because people started buying it and people started using it and people started liking it. People renewed and they bought more of it and other customers bought it. Like, don't give up. Whatever you do, don't give up. There's going to be plenty of hard days ahead. I can tell you about a lot of hard days that we've gone through, but not giving up is the number one thing, especially if you believe and you have enough conviction, you have product market fit. And once you have that, the rest of it is just scaling the company, hiring more people, if you want, raise more capital, if that's part of the journey, just figuring out a way to go further, faster.
Yeah. So what would you have any advice for people that want to go the VC route compared to bootstrapping? Would you say yes or no, or is that just a personal fit for people, or what would your advice be, comparing and contrasting?
Yeah, we ended up taking the VC route. One of the reasons why we did that is taking an AI journey needs a lot of specialized talent. Like, we have PhDs that work for us, data scientists, machine learning engineers. Like, to hire specialized talent like that, if they're not on the founding team, which in my case they weren't, you're probably going to have a big capital expenditure to be able to hire that talent. And so you can do it slow and steady bootstrapping. That was one thing. Like, are you in like an advanced technology research like type of company, which we are? Like, how are you going to do that? You can't pay hired guns at some level. Like you can pay like a out offshore developer to build, like, a Rails application, like a basic web application, but building real AI is like really hard to do. I mean, it's a lot more academic than it is, working on 2-week sprints. Like, you could work on something for 4 weeks and have to can it, and your hypothesis didn't come true, and then you have to rework it all from scratch and new hypotheses. Um, the VC route is really interesting. I mean, if you want to take money from VCs, you have to understand how they work, right? Like, every VC fund is in a 10-year cycle. They borrowed money from other people called limited partners, right? It's very rarely their money. Sometimes it is if it's a smaller fund, but I mean, you're talking about two, three, $400 million fund, unless some billionaire is taking out some of his net worth and giving it to invested in private companies. Like, you got to understand what that means, like what it means for you to take someone's money who actually borrowed it from someone else. Well, they promised them some sort of gain, like a 3x gain or 4x gain. Every dollar comes back as $5 over 10 years. Then you got to understand that, like, they have to pick one or two or three companies that are going to return their entire fund with multiples. So it's like, if you think about taking money from a VC, you have got to be honest with yourself of whether you can build a company that's worth $1 billion and how you're going to do it, right? Like, can you build a company that's worth $1 billion? That's basically how they evaluate companies in the early stages, at the seed round or at the pre-seed round or the seed round. Like, massive markets. Like for us, every company in the world can be a LinkSquares customer because they all have to deal with contracts, right?
Right.
Other great examples, like, every company in the world can be like a Datadog customer because they all have infrastructure that needs monitoring, especially in the cloud software game, right? If you can pitch them that you have like a massive market opportunity, and it'll take 3,000 customers or even less, maybe 1,000 customers that are paying you $1 million each, you can build this massive company, right? And that's ultimately the bet that they're making, because they need to give the money back to the people they borrowed it, right? It's all one big machine, right? You're part of that journey. And they're expecting you to build a massive company really quickly, right? And it makes you do things that are unnatural because essentially you're trying to get the next group of investors with a deeper pocket to do another round raise with you, right? But what does that actually mean? You're trying to hire more people and do more of everything, do more sales, be able to support more customers, build more product. You also have to think like way further ahead, like, okay, when the company is 2 years from now, we'll have 6 products in market and they're all going to do different things, but I'm only working on one product today. Then it's going to become 2, then 2 is going to become 4, if that's the strategy, right? Can you build a massive company really quickly is what VCs lens every decision with, and the odds are not good. An average seed investor will probably look at over 1,000 companies, 1,500 companies, depending on how big the fund is, maybe write 10 checks, 20 checks, right? So you got to think about, can you be 10 out of 1,500 opportunities they have to deploy this capital, right? And what proof points can you show them that it's working, right? We have traction. We have 50 customers. We're doing, 700K ARR. This is how we're doing it. This is what we're finding. People are renewing, they're expanding, they're buying, new customers are coming in. Here's our sales funnel. Like, look at all the pipeline we have. Look at how it's moving through the funnel. Like, the more evidence you can show, the better it is. I mean, it's never been easier to start a SaaS company, and it's never been harder to be the best. It's never been harder to be the best. The best companies are operating like at the highest levels with the best metrics, right? And they all are in the same industry as you. If you're selling software on a subscription license, centrally hosted in the cloud, I mean, you compete against everyone, right? And 1 to 10 million ARR in 2 years. I mean, that's like the benchmark. 2.5 years. That's like the benchmark. Yeah. 1 million to 100 million ARR in 6 years. That's the benchmark. I'm not even making this up. This is Bessemer Venture Partners State of the Cloud, right? They publish all this information when companies go public. Like, how fast do these companies grow? You can read about it. Any company that's gone public, they have all the historical data online, either in their S1 filing or in their investor relations decks. So once you kind of, understand, I can build a massive business, it's a huge opportunity. I only need to get a half a percentage of this massive market, or 1% or 2%, then it starts to become more real. Like, okay, yeah, here's the traction that I have, right? And the evidence I can support, right? Every journey is a journey, whether you bootstrap it like Atlassian. I mean, Atlassian bootstrapped it for years, for 14 years, and then they took one round of capital. Can you go slower, right? Are you in a really competitive market where the market's going to start to evaporate, especially if it's small and competitive? It's going to evaporate because people are just going to move faster than you. They're going to talk to more people. Or are you in more like a nascent market that you're trying to activate, right? Like, how activated is the market? I always think about that. Like, there's like the total addressable market that all founders, like, we roll it all different ways, but you got to take that and then multiply it times, like, what is the activation rate of this market? Like, how many people know they need your solution, right? It could be like some crazy forward-looking AI product that, like, they don't even know they need, or they don't even know that a solution exists. That's okay. You're going to spend marketing dollars to activate it, but you got to be honest about, like, how activated do you think it really is now? Category creation is massively interesting to me. I mean, we're a little bit of category creation as well with like contract analysis and contract analytics. It can take longer than you think, right? Because people don't know they need what you have, right? Everyone knows they need a CRM, right? Or they should. That's why there's 100 CRM vendors, right? And Salesforce.com is the biggest, right? But not all markets are like that. You got to be honest with yourself about what it's going to take to activate it too.
Okay, so let me ask you this for people that are trying to get into get some funding, because it sounds to me like you did a lot of research on getting funded, and it didn't just come to you. Like, I just asked you a simple question and you went on, I don't know, maybe a 7-minute rant on that, which was awesome. Right?
Sorry.
So no, I loved it. I liked every minute of it. But it brings to a point that you can't just sit back and expect it to come. Like, you obviously did some research on it. Like, what does your normal day look like? Because your normal day, I'm guessing, doesn't just deal with LinkSquares. Like, you do reading. obviously. You do research, obviously. I mean, this is for other founders. Like, what does your day look like? Leaders are readers, and I'm guessing that you're a reader and a researcher as well.
Yeah, I because we'll probably raise a fifth round of capital and a sixth round of capital. I try to spend time every week adding a new investor into like my what I call my keep warm list. Like for when I actually need to start raising capital, I have a list of people that are not like, hey, how's it going? My name is Vishal. Do you want to write a term sheet and do a financing? It's like we have some rapport. Like they've been able to keep track of me for 6 months or a year. Those are the best scenarios. The first round, the first time you raise capital, it's so hard because you don't have a deep like list of 50 firms or 100 firms. I mean, the more the better, right? If you want to go do
Sure.
this, you got to start finding outlets to get access to VCs. And the best way to do that is to find a connector. I call them connectors, right? Like other founders that have, had VCs or exited companies, or maybe that's how you build your angel investor pool, right? You start with an angel round. I did that. We started with a 500K angel round. We added 10, operators, previous founders that had, access to maybe 50 funds. And so all of a sudden now I have access to 50 funds because they've invested in my company. That's like a strategy, right? That's like, you don't get that
Sure.
overnight. You got to work really hard on it. And then don't be lazy, right? Like after you do the seed round, the Series A is not guaranteed. That round has the highest failure rate to raise. It's very hard to do. You have to go and build a massive deck. I mean, I probably added 100 over 100 firms that I had just started relationships with. Like, hey, I saw you're connected to this partner at this fund in San Francisco. Could you intro me to this person? I love to just connect with them. And you just do a 30-minute intro call. I'm
Nice.
Vishal, this is LinkSquares, this is what we're doing. Then all of a sudden your Rolodex gets massive, like 200 funds, 500 funds. And when you need to go raise capital, you already know which ones are really interested in what you're doing. And then if you have the metrics and the business performance, the magic happens, but it happens at a much higher degree of probability. People are not going to email you and be like, I want to invest in this company. Like that's a fairy tale. You got to go earn it. There's nothing is given in raising capital. Like, because you know what? They're looking at 1,000 other companies. Are you really that special? Like, are you super special? You got to prove it, right? You got to have that connectivity and be, if it's just an introduction call, you can ask a million questions like, how do you evaluate companies? Like, if you lead a Series A, what are your expectations for this metric, this metric, over here, over there? Like, then you start building the list of like, okay, well, next year, if we're going to raise this A, this is how we have to perform. I've gathered this from 10 different sources. They all say the same things. Now we can set a business strategy based on the next kind of lily pad that we're going to jump to as the frog, right? Like, it's all about jumping
Right.
across, one lily pad at a time. So, yeah, my day is a lot of that. I think, also exclusively about the future, right? Like I don't really, I mean, we're lucky enough now to have a massive team. I don't really think about this quarter. Like what goes on this quarter, we thought about 2 quarters ago, and now we're just
Right.
executing on it. Now, like I've devoted a lot of my effort. Now I think about 2022, like, what's our year end target? How are we going to get there? How many people do we need to do? And that also lines up with like our budget cycles. Like, we've got to get the plan approved for 2022 by like, in between, I always say in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? That's the time, right? If we do it too late and it bubbles into January, then we're not going to start the year off the way we want, right? We have to have all this stuff done, comp plans and budgets and planning and headcount. And it's a massive exercise. Like I exclusively just think about the future with my CFO. Like we just thinking about the future all the time. And then things like, are we going to run out of office space? How many people are going to come to the office? Like do we when does our sublease expire, or are we in a sublease, or should we get another sublease? Do we need another floor? Like all this stuff. I just spent my time thinking about the future, but it wasn't always like that. Like back in the
Yeah.
day, seed round. I mean, I do everything. Support customers, answer support tickets, onboard them, get on calls, solve issues, help with closing deals, help with product management. My CTO won't let me code, even though I can. He's like, there's no coding from Vishal ever. But getting into the nit noise of like what we're doing. I think, as I said to my squad in the journey, it's just like we can afford more luxuries with better performance, right? Like if we continue to perform and sell and code and ship and market and customer success, like if we continue doing the things that we're good at and keep doing it, then like we can buy ourselves a bigger office space and more people to help us on the journey. But like it ain't gonna happen any other way other than performance. Like we all gotta perform. And if you do that, I can do my job. My job is to raise capital. That's one of my most important jobs. I don't hand it out to anyone. I don't outsource it. I do it myself. So enable me to do my job, which is to fill up the bank account and continue moving this company forward. But it's about y'all. Y'all gotta perform, right? And when you perform, I can perform, and then we're all happy, and the journey continues, right? That's
Right.
how I've architected the last couple of years.
That's perfect, man. Getting the right people in the right seats, and then trusting them to do
Right
their
people,
job.
right seats.
And then like you said, your CTO won't let you code, right? I mean, that's him knowing what his job is. That's him knowing what your job is, and then him, you having faith in him to be able to do his job, and then him saying, "Hey, that's not your job, man. You do your job." Yeah. But
one of
the. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna say one of the things that I think about is you can have an org chart based on titles, and like that's fine. Like titles are the way for people to understand like seniority, even externally. Like who am I talking to? Oh, you're talking to the VP of so and so or the C level of so and so department, right? You know, kind of where they are in the ranking order with seniority, but we really run the company on accountability. Like what boxes are the people that work for me accountable for? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. My CMO is responsible for marketing, right? Obviously, my CRO is responsible for revenue, both existing revenue and new revenue, right? But doing it on an accountability level, like I'm going to take this box. I'm going to own this box. This is my box. Like, and knowing that you can't own 17 boxes. I mean, you do when you're a much younger company, but as you get mature, you got to start thinking about like, the things I'm not good at and the things that I don't like to do, I shouldn't do them anymore. We should hire someone to do that. Like, I shouldn't run accounting because I have never taken a course in accounting in my day in my life. And that's why I hired a CFO. And I'm like, you got it? And he's like, I got it. I've been doing this for 20 years, 15 years. Awesome, right? Right person, right seats, but also focus on what you're good at and what you like to do, right? And try to get rid of as you mature your company, try to get rid of the things you're not good at and you don't like to do because you're never going to do a good job at those. And the company really needs people and experts, right, to do this stuff. So that's how I think about it now. It's more like an accountability matrix, right? Who's accountable for what? And then the magic happens, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I want people to rewind this a couple times and listen to that because that's really good and they need to hear that. And then I want to go back just a little bit and focus on something you said when you were talking about CVs and relationships. Like relationships are huge and relationships are hard at times. But I want to focus on this. You got your Series A, if I remember right from when I was doing some research, you got that around February of 2020. Am I correct in saying that? Okay. And then you got your Series B just last month.
Yeah,
right?
The Series B.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want people to realize this, and you did this while building relationships from February of 2020 to last month during probably the worst time to build relationships in recent times of humanity. Okay, like you killed it with that. But it wasn't easy, I'm sure. So kudos to you. And for people listening to this, like it can be done. And if it can be done during COVID, like it can be done not during COVID. So yeah, I just, there's a lot of good things in this in this interview, in this podcast that people can take. This has been this has been good, and we could probably go on and on and on, but I've got another call here that I'm going to have to take pretty soon, so we're going to have to we're going to have to dock this boat here pretty quick. And I don't really want to, but we're going to have to. So, like you said, I feel very bullish about LinkSquares because you said it yourself. Everybody in the world, every business in the world has contracts. And I have a feeling that every business in the world doesn't want to have to go through their contracts to figure out what's in them. So I feel very bullish about what you have going on. So why don't we tell people how to get a hold of you, and then we'll dock this boat.
Awesome. Yeah. Check us out on LinkedIn. Search for LinkSquares. Check out our website, LinkedIn, linksquares.com. Feel free to email me, Vishal@linksquares.com. Pretty straightforward. Look forward to chatting with anyone who's interested. And thank you so much for having me on the show. It was a real pleasure.
Man, thank you so much for being on the show. And I think you have a lot more to say. So I don't know. Maybe we can do this again or figure something else out. But I really appreciate it, Vishal.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. All right, buddy.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you later. All right.